Welcome, Calculating.
Good morning, Gary. Good morning, Tim. Good to be back.
Nice to have you back in the country. We'll talk about your overseas trip at the end of our segment. But the AFLW is a huge night last night. 80-odd young ladies have had their dreams fulfilled.
Yeah, 83 picks in total used last night. So pretty exciting night in the AFLW, given the final four expansion sides had their first crack at a national draft. The highlights at the top of the pool, obviously, were the Swans grabbing Montana Ham at pick number 1. She's a Victorian girl, guys, but nominated for New South Wales after being won over by the Swans. So she's headed up there. Jasmine Fleming, a very famous name, obviously the daughter of cricket great Damien, was picked 2 at the Hawks. Port Adelaide, obviously, coming into the competition. Hannah Ewings at North Adelaide, pick 3, and Essendon as well, as the final expansion side took Amber Clark with pick 4 to kick things off. So they got a really good section of the draft early as the expansion clubs, and some really good stories in to come after that, including Yasmin Dersma, who, of course, is the younger sister of Port Adelaide, Xavier. She's going over to join her brother at the Power. So full steam ahead now for Season 7 in AFLW.
And there's a great story, and I can't remember where I actually read it or saw it, where a young girl or young woman went to support her sister and ended up being drafted on the night.
Yeah, that's right. One of the best moments of the night. Zoe Wakfa, she was at the draft as support for her sister Lauren, who was drafted by West Coast with pick number 15. She was also taken by the Eagles with pick number 36, so
Wow.
she wasn't even in a club polo, just read out her name, Nicole Livingston, and had the moment of her life. So a good story there, and I think a really good night for everyone in the AFL last night.
Sensational. Right, let's whip through a few of the names being banned. Tanner Bruin, he's a talented young kid. They got big expectations for him. Where's he sit?
Well, he's considering a move back to Victoria. He's out of contract in only his second year at the Giants. He's got a family pool back home, so it's not an opportunity-based thing for him. He's had a 2-year contract in front of him from the Giants for some time now, but has so far not signed it. So they're very keen to keep him. Clearly, they used pick 12 on him in the 2020 draft. He's the only top 15 pick from that year's draft who isn't signed beyond this year. So there's obviously some warning signs there. Look, it's not an opportunity-based. As I said, he's played 11 games this season, 13 last year. Had a good game recently with a couple of goals and 24 touches against North Melbourne. So he's a really talented player. There's going to be clubs looking at him for sure, and they're all aware that he's considering a move back home.
Yeah, GWS really like this kid, though, too. They'll have a battle on their hands, any club that's trying to rip him out of there. Now, the latest names in the Ruck merry-go-round, who are they?
Well, Luke Jackson's decision is definitely going to create a ripple effect one way or the other, whether he stays or goes. There's definitely a feel amongst clubs that Freo or West Coast are certainly more in play for him now than they were some time ago. So the Ruck merry-go-round had 5 Rucks change clubs last year. I think it could be about the same number this off-season. If Jackson does want to head west and to the Dockers, then I'm sure we'll see Lloyd Meek's name come up in trade discussions, having been the Ruck deputy, but Sean Darcy at the Dockers. Then around the competition, there's Sam Hayes, who I expect to be on the trade market, being in and out of Port Adelaide's side in recent weeks. Todd Goldstein is unsigned at North Melbourne. We know Tristan Sherry has taken on the number 1 mantle there, so he's going to have takers in it as an experienced option. GWS duo Matt Flynn and Kieran Briggs have had interest previously, but are obviously behind Braden Pruce in the pecking order there. So they're the names that clubs are looking at. There is a shortage of rucks around the competition, but they're the guys that the clubs are looking at ahead of the off-season.
I don't know anything about Luke Jackson. I hope he stays desperately for the Demon supporters. But if he is to go to Freo, they've got to do a deal, don't they? Obviously, they've got to strike some sort of deal. Otherwise, if Melbourne say, well, we can't deal, good luck, and North Melbourne can pick you up.
Well, there's that, and there's also that if you want to go home, then West Coast there are going to have the prettier picks to use, aren't they? They're going to have a top 3 pick this year. You'd expect an early pick next year as part of a future arrangement. So if he wants to go home, I'd say Melbourne would be looking at both options. But clearly Melbourne are really desperate to keep him.
Calculating Cal here. Join us from afl.com.au. The Dogs have had some success in recent times in re-signing players. Where are they at with the Alex Keith deal?
He's done. So he's actually hit a trigger, as Josh Gablich, my colleague at afl.com.au, reports today. He's hit a trigger, so he'll play on next year with the club, which will be his 4th season at the Dogs, having moved from Adelaide. They've had a busy month. He's finally hit that trigger, so he's on for 2023. Caleb Daniel, Bailey Dale signed long-term deals as free agents. The attention now is squarely on Josh Dunkley at the Bulldogs, who's out of contract, but has had offers there from the club for a while to take up. He's put that decision off, but it's reaching the time now where we'll have to make a call pretty soon. I'm sure the Bombers will ask the question again, but there are other clubs also watching that one closely. So far, the Dogs have managed to tick off all their priorities. Dunkley now is the next big one.
What about his little bromance that he's got going there at the Western Bulldogs? That'd be hard to pull
Well,
those two apart.
He has said a few times that could be a factor. Obviously, he's very, very tight with Adam Treloar at the club. But, look, there's an opportunity there. He's a year out of being a free agent, so he can't move without a trade being done. So that is a little bit of a sticking point. We know 2 years ago the Bombers weren't going to be willing to offer 2 first-round picks to grab him. They end up taking them to the draft. So his value isn't at that level anymore, given he's out of contract now. But that's certainly an interesting one.
I spoke to someone recently who is a former AFL champion, and he now he works out in a gym. Right, goes to this gym and regularly works out in this gym. And he said he'd been going to this gym. He sees this kid in there 3 days, 4 days a week. He's just looking at him, going, "How hard was this bloke going at this kid going at it? You know, really well, great physique and all that." Went over, asked his name, Will Ashcroft.
Yeah, well, that's him. He does that much extra work. I think he's set a new standard for draftees, to be honest. Look, he's finished school, so he has got extra time on his hands. He's studying at university, but what a star he is. He hasn't played a bad game all year. He had 36 touches on the weekend for Vic Metro. He does 3 extra gym sessions. He does 3 extra boxing sessions. He's written a journal, Gary. He's written a journal entry every night since he was 13. He's up to like week number 250 or something, so he's meticulous.
Sam Walsh, this is a Sam Walsh-like preparation. These are the stories that we kept hearing about Sam Walsh as he was coming through the draft.
And Bailey Smith.
His numbers, Ashcroft's numbers, stack up very, very neatly next to Walsh, McCluggage, and also Nick Dacos in recent years coming through the draft. So, look, he's ready. He's ready to go.
His father-son, obviously father-son, so Marcus is his dad, of course. But he'll have options, yeah?
Well, he'll have options. I still think the Lions are really well placed to grab him because he's got a brother coming through in a couple of years as well, Levi Ashcroft. So if he wants to play with his brother in the future, then obviously going to the Lions would help that cause. Look, I think they're in a good position. They can offer some success pretty soon and a good club, a good culture. At the moment, though, he's going to have the option of staying home given North Melbourne is there with the likely pick number 1. If West Coast had pick 1, it might have been a more difficult conversation to enter the national draft, but now he has that option. I still think the Lions are really well placed to grab him.
We all love a name, a young name that's coming through the ranks, under 16s, under 18s. We don't care where you pluck it from. What have you got for us this week?
I've got one for you. You'll love this one. So the 16s are on next week in the Gold Coast. It's a bit of a meat market in terms of agents going up, player agents, player management groups. Clubs are up there. It's a bit of a pseudo trade period to begin things in the start of July, but there is some footy being played as well. And one of the names that's come through the under 16s in recent times is a guy called Jagger Smith, Jagga. So Jagger Smith. It's going to be a name that we talk about so much over the next couple of years. He's a player from Vic Metro. He goes to Scotch College. He's a star. I watched him play last year. I went to watch Scotch to see Sam Darcy, of course, the Bulldogs' father-son, and there was a little year 9 playing, and he stole the show, Jagger Smith. So he's a pretty wiry midfielder, kicks goals, really exciting. So there's one for the 2024 draft. Just watch it in your book, Gary.
Love it, and I love the name. Just on Sam Darcy, I'm hearing massively good things about him. He's back playing in the VFL, played at fullback. He's taken 15, 16 marks a game. He's played a bit of ruck recently. What are we hearing there, Cal?
Yeah. Hearing exactly the same things and hearing that he just keeps going, Gary. So he's at 207 centimetres now. He entered the draft at about 203 and at the start of last year was in the 190s. So he just kept motoring up and that's a great thing. And that's sort of, I think, contributed to a little bit of his growing pains and some of the injuries he's had in the early part of his career. But so good to see him back at VFL level. I'm not sure we'll see him at AFL level this year, and I don't think that matters too much because they've got such an exciting prospect there. He can play forward, can play back. That's why he was picked 2 in last year's draft.
Hey, great of you to join us. Always lovely having you. Inside Trading live on the AFL website and app. It's got all the latest contract, trade and draft news. How was the Oasis Love Tour?
It was very good. I wish it was an Oasis Love Tour. It was more just the Liam Gallagher Tour. So went over to see him play at Nebworth, which is a very good day. Good to see a bit of nostalgia back in the UK.
Well done, mate. Great to talk to you.
Yes, lovely report.
And we'll talk again next week.